And we are live on March 6th to talk about whatever you would like to talk about. As always with these deals, be sure to pace out your questions a little bit. If there's a lot of people in here, one question every 5 minutes or so, just so I don't fall too far behind. So it's a reasonable length of time between when you ask the question when I answer it. But if there's not a lot of people, ask away. Just kind of read it. If there's a lot of questions coming in, pace it out just a little bit. Sorry for starting a few minutes late. Today, I literally have absolutely no reasons. I sat down an hour ago on my couch being like, oh, it looks like I got an hour until the deal starts. I guess I'll just answer some emails. Set an alarm to give myself a 10-minute warning. The alarm went off, and I was like, oh, let me just finish these emails. And then I looked up and I was like, oh, this thing starts in 2 minutes, and then I had to run up here to get going. So no excuses on my part. I was just late. Alrighty. With that said, let's dive into it. The Disney nerd. Good afternoon, Mr. Chandler. How are you? I'm good. Good. I've been feeling a little bit of pressure to finish getting a few things watched, and there are all these kind of movies that came out that I had to. It was my time was things I needed to watch were competing with one another, and after finishing watching all the movies of this week, and then I had a deadline for some Game of Thrones stuff for tomorrow, and then I got a Disney ranking in a couple days. And once I get past that, then I got a lot more breathing room. So I'm pretty excited to get to the light at the end of the tunnel. February was an interesting month because it was like really slow for movies, but I knew all these things I needed to get watched for certain deadlines and stuff, and then we didn't have power for a week and we were at the in-laws, and so I didn't. It was like a week of movie watching for me is important. So I lost a week, and so I fell behind. So I was like really stressed in a really weird sort of way. Like I gotta get these movies watched, which is a strange living. Gamer, hey Sean, did you hear Superman and Lois is being delayed after March 23rd till May 18th? Yeah, I had heard that. I did hear that. I guess it's unfortunate. It's not, I guess, not terribly surprising. I think the thing that's surprising to me is the announcement itself, the way it just feels weird the way they're saying it, because the show just debuted and like looks like we got a delay for 2 months. Well, you couldn't have. It's not like something just changed that you discovered that. So haven't you already always known this? So the way they announced it struck me as odd. And I don't know if it's just because they really were wanting to make a big splash and they didn't want to. I don't know. I don't it The way it was announced was weird to me. Because it doesn't seem like you'd be like surprise it got delayed 2 months. So yeah. Rich reviews. Are you a fan of streaming service Shutter or BritBox? I don't even know what BritBox is, and I've never really used Shutter, so we got to go with no on both of those ones. I've at least heard of Shutter. BritBox, I'm assuming, would be like a streaming service for British shows. I have no idea. That's just totally a guess based off the name, which wouldn't immediately attract me. I'm not drawn towards British television in particular. There's nothing. I mean, not throwing shade or anything, but that's just not one of the directions that I've ever drifted. Zachary, what kind of movie would you like to see Chris Evans, Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, and Chris Pine star in? Like, I think an action comedy heist film could be fun. Guess I'm assuming you're meaning like if you did a team up movie with all of the Hollywood Chris's. Um, I mean, kind of going with sort of an Ocean's 11 type vibe. There's a logic there. It's a genre that works well as an ensemble. When you do a movie like that, you want to see the fun that comes with it. So, I mean, I think like an Ocean's 11 type thing would make sense. And that movie, the remake came out 20 years ago. I mean, I guess they did revive it with the girl version, but if they wanted to totally refresh the whole deal 20 years later, that's not the craziest thing in my mind. The fun of it was watching all these actors having fun together in a genre that's inherently fun. So I'd be sure. I don't have a different idea in mind because yeah, I don't have a different idea in mind. Give me rent. No rent for you, Spider Man 2 guy. Spider Man 3 reference. It's also a Spider Man 2 reference. CJ, are you excited for Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Of course I am. I mean, I did a video ranking the Disney Plus Marvel shows based off my excitement and trailer reactions and stuff. So I've got a bunch of videos where I've talked about my excitement for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I even talked about it a little bit in yesterday's WandaVision review, but of course, I mean, it's a granted at this point in time. At this point in time, anything that is part of, associated with the MCU, I'm excited for. But just in general, there's very few examples of when I'm not excited for a comic book related property that's kind of the mainstream stuff. I mean, when it's like, oh, this is based off, they put out The Kitchen 2 years ago, technically based off a DC Vertigo comic, but it's just like a women mob movie in New York. Like, that's not, anything superhero-y, comic booky. I'm going to be excited for it, but, the MCU's track record at the moment is very, very good. Harvest Texas pretty well back to normal. There's the stores was the thing that kind of lingered the longest, and then there's just a lot of pipe damage. My wife works for a company that does restorations called ServPro, and they if your house floods from pipes bursting, they come in and they clean everything out, and so you can get the new stuff. And so they've been just slammed ever since the Snowmageddon because the number of people with water damage exceeded all of the capabilities of the state of Texas. And so then our company's even trying to pull people in from everywhere, and they just can't keep up with all of it. Gavka, Paramount Plus thoughts. I mean, I haven't used Paramount Plus. I've been using CBS All Access for years, so I haven't looked into the differences or anything like that. I mean, it's only like a week old, and there's nothing that was particularly interesting to me about like I better rush to check this one out. So I haven't even opened it. I've seen the icon um, appear, but that's about it. Jay Studdard, I respectfully disagree with your WandaVision ranking. I mean, as I said in the video, like as I said at the very beginning, with the nature of the show, I think we're all going to disagree. I mean, statistically speaking, enough people are writing their so with the number combinations, someone's going to overlap at some point. But that with a show that's so odd and has the episodes are so different from one another that there's no continuity in our rankings. Like I look at everyone's rankings and I go, okay. I look at my own ranking and I go, I don't even know how to rank this. So I assumed everyone was going to disagree with me. So I was like, yeah, I mean, I assume everyone's going to disagree with all my rankings. I kind of go into it. That's just kind of anytime I don't know how to respond when people say, "Oh, I disagree with your ranking," because my thought is, well, of course you do. Why wouldn't you? Um, so I mean, I really do. I think people are going to disagree with everything I say. So because it's not the interesting thing to me isn't the it wouldn't be interesting to me if we all had the same ranking, and so it wouldn't. There'd be no value to us all having the same opinions on movies. The fun part is that we all have a different perspective on the world, and we connect and resonate with different things. And even a bunch of you we've been talking about WandaVision in the comments, and I've been doing it on Twitter as well, just debating Hayward and his role in WandaVision and having wildly different interpretations of the character. And both sides throwing all sorts of what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? And that's we all see the world differently. And that's the fun part is that we do see it differently. Oh, here we go. Dave Patterson, Dave WandaVision is one of my favorite things to come out of the MCU. Yeah, I'm still kind of feel like I need to process it longer than most things because I guess in the MCU because it is longer. And in this other sense, it's like we've been processing it for 2 months. So it's an interesting one of the way that it's 2 months after a movie comes out, you assume that you've kind of like fully absorbed it. And with this one, we've been watching it, analyzing it, discussing it for 2 months, and I'm still like, where do I land on this one? But I don't even know. It's just really tough for me to compare movies and TV shows because I categorically view them differently and what they're trying to do and advantages and different disadvantages. And when you have all the movies are designed to be watched in one sitting. And with WandaVision, they intentionally released it in 8 batches. 2 week 1 and then 7 more weeks of 1 episode. And that's very different experiences of how you watch something. And for as I said in my reviews, one of the things that was most fun about WandaVision for me was the ongoing discussion week to week. Once we got past episode 4 and we kind of the information was out there, and it's like, okay, there was just a lot of fun to have those conversations, but that's very different from the way that those conversations took place with the movies. And there was a lot of that with the movies too, with prediction videos and stuff like that. But it's interesting. Rich Reeves went to go see Caddyshack at Alamo last night. 14 people were in the audience. People were laughing, and I laughed some. What percentage of comedies age well? I mean, you could just say what percentage of movies age well. And generally speaking, most movies are products of their time and forgotten. I mean, just totally forgotten. So it's, I think, in certain ways, comedies may be a bit more timely, but I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't have a percentage on it. Zachary, has anyone else shocked to see Batman die in WandaVision? Haha. Yeah, it's pretty wild when Wanda opened up the whole multiverse and we stepped into the DC universe and people started dying. Matt McCarthy, ever see What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Yeah, I've seen it. I haven't seen it probably in 15 years. So whenever I had watched it, it was somewhat in the context of the backlash against Leonardo DiCaprio. And if you're younger, if you're around my age, and so you were a teenager when Titanic came out, there's a pretty big backlash against Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, this guy can't act. He's just a pretty boy, and all this stuff that was feels very amusing 20 years later. And he's obviously one of the most celebrated actors that every top tier director wants to work with. And but around the zeros 3-4 years after Titanic, he was the Titanic guy, because if anything's too popular, there's that pendulum swing back the other way, and so there was a big piece of that. And so I saw What's Eating Gilbert Grape in that context, and I'm enough of a contrarian to I never fully bought into the Titanic sucks or anything like that, but I have enough of me in it that likes to be on the side that's bucking against popularity, even though I love the MCU. That's maybe I've softened in my old age. I was just more hard edge when I had long hair. But so I watched it in that context, and you watch it and you go, this Leonardo DiCaprio fella can really act. And even in this Johnny Depp, you kind of forget how good of an actor he is, because he just spent 20 years after he did Jack Sparrow. He just kept putting on white makeup, face paint, and acting weird. White face paint, eyeliner, act like he's drunk. The kids are having fun right outside the window. Actually, let's see if we can even get this camera to check out what no, it's too bright. I've got my settings all set, but the baby's crying, the kids are screaming. All right, mom's out there. I don't need to go check on him. But so you watch it and you just see like a 13-year-old, 15-year-old Leonardo DiCaprio, and the guy was just a tremendous talent. Paul, what would you grade an entertainment score WandaVision? I wouldn't. If I had a score, I would have given it 1. Like, I'm not being like I don't forget to score things. If I don't give it an actual score, it's because I just don't have one. I don't remember where I said which things in whatsy, but like TV shows to me are very difficult to score because it's like 8 things. It's not one thing, or it's 9 things. 9 things, not one thing, but they're 9 things that come together for a whole thing, and that's just a lot of different variables that just make it. I just don't. It's tough to think about it in the same way as I think about a movie. And I don't even like giving scores to movies. All the time I give a score to a movie, and then I do a ranking, and people are like, hey, wait a minute, why is your ranking on this one different from that one? I was like, I'm doing the best I can. And I'm trying to, like, I evaluate, like, I'll approach things in different contexts from different reasons, and it makes sense in my head, but it's not necessarily easy to communicate. And if your brain isn't wired the way mine is, then you won't follow the logic the same way. So, but same with just with movies, it's easier to like watch it, this one contained story, and put a score on it. And I don't know what I would do with that with the WandaVision. I just don't know. Likewise, I feel like if I gave a score to it, then I do a ranking later this year that I'll put it in with the movies at the end of the year. Probably whenever the last movie TV show comes out, I'll probably just do combined movies and TV, which would be like 30, 31 or something like that. Is a lot. Um, and people will pull that score and they'll be like, wait a minute, in this review you gave this, and they'll start doing stuff like, and it doesn't do me any favors. It makes it tricky, but it's a positive review. It's like I I don't think like I said, I don't I'm comfortable with it. But B plus, like a safe, very positive but little slightly restrained answer. I don't know, like something like in that ballpark. It's not. It's certainly not. It's certainly a positive score, and it's not just a mildly mixed. It's more positive than that. There's some things where I think there's some lack of clarity in some points. There's some things that I thought were awkward. There's some things that I don't. I had some issues with it, so it's not like full blown like just I'm bananas for it. I love the novelty of it, that it's different. So I just it's tough. I don't know. I don't want to just avoid giving you an answer, but it's um I just don't know. I don't have an answer I'm confident in. So B plus, a generic answer. Dave Pedersen, I rewatched WandaVision one sitting last night. We've kind of done that. We've had several days where we've watched binged huge chunks of it. Disney nerd, do you think it was smart to release Raya the Last Dragon on the same day as the season finale of WandaVision? And I some of this stuff is I don't understand how they do this stuff, because we had a February with almost nothing came out, and then I did 4 movie reviews last week plus WandaVision, and then in addition to that, SpongeBob came out, and some other stuff too dropped on Netflix. All of that in one week, and then we go into this next week, and it's this that stuff doesn't. It's not like that. I don't know how they make these decisions. I think one problem that you have to consider with Disney is when you have a very aggressive Disney Plus release schedule, you don't really have a lot of good dates. Because what are you going to wait 2 weeks and you're going to compete against the release of Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Well, that's not a great idea. So there's always complications with when all the different pieces to it, and the more you put out, the more competition you have with yourself. So I don't know why so much stuff all came out on the same weekend. I don't feel like Disney picked the best strategy with Raya. My early projections that I saw seems like it's going to make a significant percentage wise less than Tom and Jerry made in the theater. And they're different release strategies, pretty significantly release strategies. But you keep in mind, Tom and Jerry came out and it's free on HBO Max and still made like 50% more at the box office opening weekend. Whereas Raya is released also on streaming, but you have to pay an extra $30. So that'll be more revenue over here for the $30 people. But that should also have been more of an incentive for people to go out to the theater versus in Tom and Jerry, which is free on HBO Max, seems like it's selling significantly more tickets. And that's weird because Raya is a very good movie. Very good movie. So some of it's kind of confusing me. Thoughts on E.T.? It's a fantastic family film. I had like everyone else my age, had the VHS growing up. My wife hates it. It's since everyone from my generation has seen it, and it was such a big part of the culture. If you're a child from the '80s, there's a lot of people my age that hate that movie because specifically the and he skins this color and he's in a sewer. They can't do it. Like they were traumatized. Their parents like, you got to watch E.T. and then he's in this and they're toast. So I would watch that movie pretty regularly probably, and I would have shown it to my kids already, but my wife is not a fan. So, but I mean, it's a classic Spielberg. It's I refer to him as a boy and his dog stories, where you have this kid that's family's not in the best place, and then he connects with like a dog, or in E.T., an alien. In Bumblebee, connects the girl connects with Bumblebee. Is this one of those movies, and obviously one of the best ones. Mr. Davis, what are your top 10 missed opportunities for WandaVision? I mean, I don't have a list like that off the top of my head. I mean, it's tough for me to give answers like that because missed opportunities, we had 1,000 theories as to what could have been going on, but those aren't all necessarily missed opportunities. And, it's not a missed opportunity. Like, if you shoot yourself in the foot to be like, yeah, we actually did tie in the Fox X-Men universe, and we actually did tie this, and we tied this, and we did this, and they're calling those missed opportunities. They're not missed opportunities if you would have shot yourself in the foot to do that. So, I mean, I just don't off the top of my head have a list of those. I think I've already, like, make some statements as to things where I think they made some off mistakes. I think overselling the cameos, whether through the interviews, a quote taken out of context, that they didn't tamper that rumor. They let the news media run with it. Paul Bettany poured gasoline on that fire. And then with the Evan Peters stuff, they implied that their show was this fan servicey type thing. I think they shot themselves in the foot by doing that because you create an expectation isn't realistic. I actually shot a video for tomorrow that's kind of on that, so I don't want to elaborate too much on that. It's for Patreon, just a simple little kind of elaboration on an issue. I think not developing Hayward enough, or I think the show needed to do a better job of perhaps using Hayward as the moral balance to Wanda. And instead of trying to make her seem very sympathetic because she's sad and feels bad, and him just a jerk because he wants to kill kids, but if you step back, it's a much more complicated situation. I think they needed to make that a more balanced, philosophical, moral discussion. Because one of the leads of the shows that we're supposed to be rooting for took a city hostage. And it deals with that from the perspective of she feels bad at the end of it. She didn't realize she was torturing people. But like that, you can't take people hostage whether you're treating them nice or not. And so you get to the end of it, and that's not a thing that's really... It's not a thing that's elaborated on. Like, that's not the moral discussion. I think that there's something there that needed to be discussed on a greater level. Gamer thoughts. What are your thoughts on Harrison Wells? It's tough to talk about it. Talk about what you're referring to, because obviously I don't want to spoil anything in case someone hasn't started the new season of The Flash. And beyond that, it's tough to discuss it because I just feel really bad for the show The Flash, because they didn't get to finish their last season. And so then these first episodes of this season are really the last episodes of last season. And so then the season kicked off with stuff that was a really bad season opener. But it's not their fault. It's not their fault. Because this isn't a season opener. It's like the last 3 episodes of last season. And so I have a hard time knowing how to evaluate this episode we got, because intellectually I know it's not a season opener. But it is the first thing I've seen from the show in 10 months or something like that, 9 months. And it is the opener for a season. So, I in the context of having not watched the show in 10 months, or the last episode 10 months ago, I didn't think the episode worked very well. I thought it was very awkward and clunky, which is I know, an unfair criticism, because I didn't feel like I felt like I should have felt what I was supposed to feel, and the plot point they were making felt like that needed to play out over like 3 episodes. That was not because it felt like we're doing a comedy episode, and then it was more than a comedy, or more like a drama episode pretty quickly. And it seemed like that needed to really give it time to have the characters feel all that. Matt, are you going to watch I Care a Lot with Rosamund Pike? It's not on my radar at this time. It's not. It's not really on my radar. If I hear amazing things about it, maybe I'll change that. But it's not one that I haven't seen the trailer. I don't know what it's about, so it's not on my radar. So, Paul, in your next MCU ranking, are you going to include WandaVision as a whole, or just stick to ranking the movies? No, I mean, I said this. I alluded to this earlier, and I tried to pin a comment on yesterday's review saying this, but there's no there. I don't like to rank movie shows and TV shows together. Movies and TV shows together because they're different things. This is a bit different, and so and I know there's enough demand for it that I'll do it. But I saw some charts today that indicate they're going to put out maybe 5 Disney Plus Marvel shows this year if Hawkeye and Miss Marvel end up coming out this fall, plus 4 movies. And we're already at 23 Marvel movies. That's already 2 hours to shoot that video and many hours to edit it. It's a big video at 23 movies. And then when you crank that up to over 30, that's a lot. And one of the reasons how I keep all these fresh is that I rewatch all this stuff for these videos very frequently. And it's tough to have fresh thoughts on that many things. And sometimes I don't even have fresh thoughts. And so and then when you start thinking there's 9 of them, 9 of these different things, it doesn't make a lot of sense to just crank all of them together in one batch every single time. Certainly, I'm not going to do 9 different updates of MCU stuff ranked. So my thought is maybe once a year, once every 2 years, I'll do all of them combined. But you think once we get past 2022, 2 years where they're cranking out 7, 8, 9 movies and TV shows, we're almost to 40 by the end of next year. The year after that is like 45. So it's just a lot. And so I'm trying to think through what's the right frequency to which they can be ranked to not burn out the audience. But at the same time, this is my most popular content. I get this question so many times every day. So many times. Oh, it's one of those questions that I'm trying to think what can I do to get my answer out there to more people, because I'm answering it constantly. And I don't really even know what the right answer is long term, because MC used to be 3 movies per year. That was part of this creative team, 3. And I was doing 3 MCU rankings, and I thought, maybe that's a little bit much. Maybe I should dial that back to 2, or just maybe only 1 per year. But it's really popular content, so I was like, people are still clicking. I'm going to go with all 3, and it looks like we're going to have not 3, not 6, but 9 of them per year. That's just a lot. It's a lot. So I don't know what the best strategy is, but I am excited that we're getting a lot of hit content that. I love this stuff, and I know my audience loves it, so a lot of things we'll be talking about. Jay Stutter, do you think Blu-rays are going to be obsolete? I don't know what's next. I mean, everything becomes obsolete. I grew up with VHS tapes. I haven't owned a VCR in 10 years or something like that, or a working one in 10 years, a long time. And then, I owned an enormous number of DVDs. I almost never put a DVD in because I have Blu-rays. DVDs became obsolete. I've got a garage full of them, but they're pretty obsolete. And so then now you get to current era where 4Ks are about to. And I think streaming's the actual next thing, or online storage and stuff like that is the next thing, and it's obviously in most ways better technology, because I can have my Voodoo library on my computer, all my devices, my phone. That's better than having to take a disc with me that can get scratched. But the downside to digital is that then if the studio decides that they want to edit it, then you can't have it anymore. Whether you're referring to George Lucas only wants to have the latest version of the Star Wars movies with his weird tweaks, and that's the only one you got because that's the only one they put on the street or on the digital stuff, or some of the more recent stuff where there's a push to kind of edit older content that has stuff that we would now properly deem racist, whatever, phobic, or any number of things that are bad. We wouldn't allow them in movies now. But we're going back and editing them out of things, and so you can't get the original version as it was created because it's now deemed offensive, and the things they're editing are largely things that are offensive. But there's a very different discussion as to whether you should edit things of the past just because they don't meet our current standards of what is and isn't offensive. And so there's a lot of reasons to want to have a physical copy that you have it. It's right there in your hands, and it's not edited. Even I was talking to one of my friends, my workout partner, one of my actual oldest, longest friends, who groomsman in my wedding, and I was a groomsman in his wedding. And he's really into finding hard to find TV shows. Like that's a community that he's a part of, like old sitcoms from 15 years ago that never got a full Blu-ray release, and tracking them down so that people can have them so they're not lost and they can be watched again. And there'll be versions of shows that are the version that's on streaming is the version that is edited for syndication. And so they cut, like he was talking about Malcolm in the Middle, you can get all the episodes of it, but the Super Bowl episode that ran right after the Super Bowl was an extended episode that was like 15 minutes longer. But the version you can get now has the extra stuff cut, so it's cut down to the normal length of an episode, not the Super Bowl length. And so then part of this community he was on, they tracked down someone that had it recorded on a DVR or a VHS tape or something like that, and then were able to find and restore what was lost. And I think that's where physical media will always have a place for collectors. That you don't want to trust only the one that's on the hard drives out there that you can stream. There's a lot of danger in that. John Sutherland, that was a long answer. Hey Sean, with mask mandates and capacity rules changing in Texas, do you see yourself going back to the theater anytime soon? I've been back to the theater a week ago. I was at the theater last Sunday. I saw Tenet in the theater. I saw New Mutants in the theater. I saw Wonder Woman in the theater. I've been to the theater many times since last August. Or was that beginning of September? Whenever New Mutants was the first one that I saw in the theater, I believe. And then Bill and Ted the next day. And that's what I don't remember that. Maybe I got my weeks wrong. But I've been back to the theater. If you follow me on Instagram, I mean, even in my reviews, in my Tom and Jerry review, showed pictures of it and everything like that. But I've been back in the theater, so I'm. I mean, if you go to the theater, there's no one around you. It's kind of a weird conversation because I've had people been like, "Why are you going to a theater when there's a pandemic?" Like you go there, there's no one there. The parking lot's empty. You check out, and the person that works there is behind a plexiglass shield. Like there's no way that you could even contact them. You go in the theater, and there's no one within 15 feet of you, but it's already an empty theater anyway. And so there's a lot of people that they're envisioning crowded theaters like before. It's just not like that. It's not like that at all. But I was never like running scared from theaters. I went back 6 months ago. Zachary, I just watched Whiplash for the first time last night. What a movie. Yes, it's a very good movie. Rich Reviews. Now people are outraged over Dr. Seuss and the fact that Lola Bunny is no longer sexy. They're robbing my childhood. Lola Bunny's no longer sexy. Yeah, I haven't looked into the specifics to those six Dr. Seuss books that were pulled. I haven't looked at the specifics. Generically speaking, I'm not for pulling things. If I'm for getting information out there to say like, hey, these 6 books contain stuff that any normal person now would say that shouldn't be in there. These are dangerous stereotypes. I'm all for getting information like that out there. It seems like a bad path to be on. We're not going to publish these anymore given that 2 weeks ago none of us were like complaining about six Dr. Seuss books having really bad stuff in them, and then now the country's split. One half of the country being like, "Why are we canceling Dr. Seuss?" The other half, "Why are we?" Okay, let's have a more balanced discussion on this. But Lola Bunny, it's the fact that it's a conversation of why is she no longer sexy in this movie for children, in and of itself is inherently a funny discussion. Like, what? It's a bunny in a movie for kids. What are we talking about right now? Gav just watched Mean Creek for the first time the other night. I don't know what Mean Creek is, unfortunately. The Disney nerd, I thought Raya and the Last Dragon was a very good film. Probably the best Disney animated film since Wreck-It Ralph. I got a ranking coming up, so I won't chime in on that. I'm not going to chime in on my thoughts on that. But if you watch my review, it's in the realm of possibility that I'm in agreement with you. I really dug it. It's sometimes it's tough for me to have a balanced take on like the Frozen movies because I've had 3 kids during the Frozen era. So those movies, I am fully seeing the power of Frozen on kids, and it's pretty wild stuff how much kids love those movies. So it's a bit tricky for me, but Raya, love that one. Just sort of, do you sell Blu-rays or give away the ones you don't watch, or do you keep all of them? I keep all of them. Dave Patterson, I rewatched Godzilla 2014 last night. I really like it. I get that Godzilla should have been in it more, but I just like everything about the way it's shot and scored. I'd agree with you. I would totally agree with you. I've always been a bit confused by how much backlash that movie gets. And on the one hand, like I hear what they're saying, like why isn't Godzilla in it more? Why, like you have these scenes where Godzilla shows up and then 2 doors close, so they're like he's about to punch someone and the doors close and block it off, and it's like they're about to punch each other, and then it cuts to a news broadcast. And like intellectually, I can hear all of that and be like, I get why you're digging the movie for that, but I've always been a bit confused why more people don't give it credit for the things it does well. Zachary, everybody wants John Krasinski and Emily Blunt to be Mr. Fantastic or Invisible Woman in the MCU. Do you think they will actually get cast as those roles? No. No, I don't think so because it's very rare that the fan base's request for fan castings turn out to be studio castings because we don't have all the information they have. We don't I guess here's the inherent problem with all of our fan casts. We don't have the story in front of us. We don't have the script in front of us. We don't have the director and the writer and Kevin Feige's vision for those characters. Or if it's DC, Zack Snyder's vision. Like we don't have the information that they have. We're trying to guess based off of all the other media that's out there for the characters. And so then we make kind of synthesize all of that, but that's like the most broad generic version of the character, whereas they want something specific and distinct that pops. And so whatever all those distinctives are that are their version, that they this is what we think is really interesting about this character. We don't have any of that information. We only have the broad generic version and make our fan cast based off of that, and therefore we're almost always wrong. I don't know if there's too many maybe there's some example out there that I've forgotten about where the fans were guessing who they were going to cast for a year and we were right. I can't think of that one. Texting my wife to get my power cord. Every week I do this. I bring my computer up here and I think it's going to last and it doesn't. I think my battery's shot. This computer's not even a year old and I think my battery's shot. That's unfortunate. Jonas, don't know if you ever already plan on covering this in the future MCU videos or if you've already answered this, but how would you compare both the Fox Dark Phoenix stories to Wanda's arc so far? How would you compare both of Fox Dark Phoenix stories to Wanda's arc so far? I haven't really thought about that. I I mean, I think Last Stand, there's just not much anything there. It's just she dies and she comes back and she's evil. So that's not. I just it's such a rushed version of it that it's tough to say. Um, and then the movie Dark Phoenix does a better job of giving the character an arc, but I don't think either they're not even in the same ballpark as Wanda. Some of the, I mean, Wanda has had 6 years of content to develop the character and has this rich backstory about a troubled, like she had a backstory before we got to WandaVision. She had a tragic backstory, redemptive arc, failures, and the events of Civil War. We already knew she'd lost Vision and was sad about, like, there's so much stuff we already knew about her that kind of gave her an interesting backstory. So I don't think that the Dark Phoenix, as it's been explored thus far, is in the even in the same ballpark as what they've done with Wanda. If you were to independently produce your own season of Mystery Science Theater 3000, which films would you choose? You know, if I did my own little Mystery Science Theater 3001, I would want to. I mean, I'd want it to be about things that are fun for me. So, oh hey, the baby. I'm actually doing a live stream. I guess you can make an appearance if you want. Where's? Yeah, you're on the internet. You got the hiccups? Oh, is that? Yeah. Did you see Wanda over here? Yeah. Yeah. So she found Wanda. So I would probably, by default, I'd pick that early batch of comic book movies. So, and I'd do even the TV movies. There was a '70s Doctor Strange movie, '70s Spider Man, Captain America 1990. Was that Doctor Mordrew or something like that? That was like a knockoff of Doctor Strange. That's what I would do, just because that's the guy that I know, and I think there's some, you go through all of these comic book movies that have been bad throughout the years. I think that's what I would do. Jay Sutter, do you think WandaVision finale was a little generic? I mean, it kind of I mean, I put out a 40-minute review yesterday and then a ranking today with my thoughts on it. I mean, I think in a sense, like, does it end with an MCU people punching each other in the face? Yeah. And so compared to the rest of the show, it's a little bit familiar. But I mean, I don't think that everything has to be super creative and reinvent the genre and stuff like that. So there's a side to it where I can be like, yeah, a bit, maybe, but I don't. I guess I just don't think that's inherently a bad thing.
What's that?
This is the guy from Star Wars.
Daddy?
Yeah,
What's this?
he's from Star Wars, from Jabba's palace.
Yeah?
Yeah. Gamerman, what are your thoughts on Lois Lane so far? I'm digging what they're doing with her. They're what I've appreciated is that CW is a little bit infamous for, especially like Supergirl and Batwoman, for very much having a single perspective on the world, politically speaking, and you kind of know where they fall on a bunch of stuff, and they're pretty heavy-handed on it. And what Superman and Lois is doing is, it's not that the show still has a perspective and the characters still fall on a side, but they don't villainize the other side, and so you have her as this reporter that's also trying to be a family person. And what I appreciated is that on a CW show, they have Superman decide to put being Superman on the back burner, and Lois Lane put being the world's greatest journalist on the back burner for the sake of their family. And I very much appreciate that. And the show seems to have a lot more balance to it than some of the other CW shows. And so I've thoroughly enjoyed what they've done with her. They've like, she feels like a real person that is relatable while being world famous news person. Who's that? Who's that? That's Vision. It's Uncle Vision. Dear Patterson, the boner reel really bothered me. I'm very vague on this because I know some people didn't finish the show yet. Yeah. Yeah, that was... Of all the ways to pay off that bit. That joke...
Daddy, what's that?
You threw my stuff over. What do you mean, what's this? You did that. I didn't do that. You threw my stuff down. It's messed up, the baby. It's messed up. Ryan West, do you think there will actually be multiverse elements in No Way Home? That's a good question. Because they keep teasing multiverse and then not doing it. I think there will be. I think there will be multiverse elements in No Way Home, but I think it'll be elements. I think the big multiverse stuff is Multiverse of Madness. I think there's a bunch of things that people want to be in No Way Home that are actually in Doctor Strange 2. And that's what's making it confusing because things are taking place at the same time and there's going to be Spider-Man-y multiverse stuff that's actually in Doctor Strange 2. The Disney Nerd, is Godzilla 2014 essential to watch before Godzilla vs. Kong comes out? I mean, I haven't seen Godzilla vs. Kong, so I can't tell you. I mean, I don't know. Based off the trailers, I don't think you need to watch Godzilla 2014, but you do need to watch Godzilla King of the Monsters. The cast of Godzilla King of the Monsters is in Godzilla vs. Kong. So that is the one that I think you need to watch. Jonas, what do you miss the most about CW Arrowverse from its early stages now that you're watching Superman and...
What's this?
Garrus, I'm like, I'm doing a live stream. Did you want to go somewhere else?
No.
You want to stay here?
Oh.
All right. What do you miss most about the CW Arrowverse from its early stages now that you're watching Superman and Lois? Well, I mean, early stages, I would just say, I would think about that as Arrow and Flash, and they had distinct styles, flavors, and they could stick to their concept, their initial concept, which, you know, Arrow was a vigilante show, Flash was a show about this guy that turned into the Flash, and then each of those shows as they went along, everyone turned into a superhero. At the beginning, they had elements of secrecy, and they had their real life and their superhero life, and they were trying to keep it a secret, and then as you went along, everybody knew. And I think that's what kind of killed a lot of those shows or took some of the fun out of them is there was no contrast between heroes and everyone else because everyone has powers. And Syndrome has let us know that when everyone is special, no one's special. And that's what those shows did. It was the fulfillment of Syndrome's fantasy. And so you get to Superman, and I mean, none of that really ties back into Superman, and she just kind of collapsed on the floor there, didn't she? Superman and Lois, there's not really a tie to that show in that regard. It's not like that show reminds me of it. I think it's doing something fresh and different, which I appreciate, but that's what I miss. Jason, how many times have you rewatched WandaVision with your family? I have no clue. It's a lot. It's a lot. That's somewhat what makes me a little bit... Like, I had comments last week from people like, I guess this show just isn't for you. You wanted it to be a big spectacle show. You don't like saying all this stuff. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've watched this show probably more times than you have. I just was disappointed by some plot points. I don't think some things paid off the way they should. That doesn't mean the show wasn't for me. It just means I was disappointed by something. But we watched it so many times. Even the baby has. Gamer Man, do you think WandaVision will get a second season? No. I mean, the title of this last episode was series finale. That's the name of the episode is series finale. It's a contained concept. I don't like if they wanted it to be an ongoing show. There was a way they could have done that, but that's not what they did. They designed this to be this exact story that they told, and there's not an obvious way for that to continue. Zachary, if you were to get $1 every time somebody asked you, will you rank the MCU shows with the movies, how much money would you have? I don't know. I would enjoy having that much money. It's certainly I could. I could buy Raya and the Last Dragon on Disney Plus multiple times. I'll put it that way. It is not a small number. John Southern, I'm saving your WandaVision content until I watch the show. Obviously, do you think you would have done as much content on it if you weren't dealing with COVID in the absence of MCU movies? I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I would it because I kind of always play it by ear, and I've always kind of been like that. I used to do a lot more week to week TV shows with the Arrowverse, or experimented with it. Even if you can go back to the before even Sean Chandler Talks About, I had Gotham reviews, I had some Arrow reviews and stuff, and it when the channel got going, week to week reviews are tough because you have to block a group batch of time to watch it in a specific window, shoot a video, edit a video, post it while the iron is still hot, and that takes a lot of work. And so I kind of stopped doing week to week TV shows, so episode reviews. So I didn't do Mandalorian season 1 week to week reviews. I don't think I did. Don't think I did. Maybe I'm forgetting. But I watched it as part of a tradition. Every Friday we'd pick up my son from school and we watched the new episode of The Mandalorian for season 1. And season 2 stuff wasn't coming out, so I did week to week reviews. So then when WandaVision came out, I actually wasn't sure if I was going to do week to week reviews because the first 3 episodes are sitcoms. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to cover. Like I don't know I'm going to cover this in this way. But then the Mandalorian stuff had been just solid hits, and MCU's even bigger content for me, and so my Mandalorian or my WandaVision reviews did significantly better than my Mandalorian reviews, which already had been doing good for me. And so I just don't know, because it's so much of it is like you just look at the window of time, like, do I have the time to cover this right now? And if I cover this, what does it mean I'm not covering? There's sometimes it's like that. This February, almost no movies came out. So if I hadn't covered this, what else would I have been covering? So it's a lot of that. This whole last year was me trying to manufacture energy a lot. That nothing was coming out, so it's like, oh, the top 10 this and whatever this. Just I'm trying to figure something out that it can get some people excited. And some of it really didn't work, but I don't have to manufacture energy for new weekly MCU content, new weekly Star Wars content. So it's just tough to know what the world would have been like, how I would have used my time if I hadn't if we weren't in the world of COVID. Rich reviews. Hope one day you can rank all of the Godzilla films and rank the Godzilla eras. I doubt that would ever happen because I'm just not that guy. It's also a video that just, if you're not, like, if your channel is about Godzilla, that's the biggest video on your channel. If your channel is mine, how many of my subscribers have seen all of those? Like, how many of my subscribers have seen every episode of WandaVision? A lot. A high percentage. So a ranking of all the episodes, a lot of my subscribers can join in. How many have watched 5 Godzilla movies? That's maybe a decent number. How many have seen 10? Very small percentage. How many have seen all of them? Very, very small percentage. And that's what makes it tough to, like, dedicate the time to watch 30 Godzilla movies when I don't know if how many of my subscribers would even check that out. Rich Price, hey Sean, your studio is looking great. As always, a pleasure to watch. I appreciate it. Yeah, probably will start transitioning back to my normal in the near future. Literally what happened, I did my Blu-ray collection video, and I wanted this final shot of me putting everything back. And so I couldn't have the desk right there. You can see the tape on the ground. Those little spots. That's the tape for the corners of my desk go. So if my desk was right there, you couldn't see me putting my Blu-rays back. So I just moved my desk right there. And so then I shot the shot, and while I was still editing and stuff, the Superman news broke last week about the Ta-Nehisi Coates project. I was like, I got to make a video about this. So I just shot a video from right here at the desk where I was editing. And I went, this is kind of a fun little change of perspective. I'll stick with it for a week. So that's the whole story on it. Some people keep asking me about it, but But that's it. The Disney nerd. Out of all the memes videos you've used in your videos, which one do you think you've used the most? Probably Not a Great Plan or Wow, That Was Weird. So either Tony Stark, Not a Great Plan, or the movie Elf. Wow, that was weird. Those are the two that probably make the most appearances. Here, Patterson, if I watched Apocalypse Now, it was the theatrical cut. It was so good, so good. That the fun one on that one is that the gift keeps on giving because there's multiple cuts of the movie, and then you just look into the backstory of how the movie was made, and it's bananas. Gamer Man, I hear Candice Patton might be thinking about leaving the Flash because I've heard she does not like working in Vancouver, and next year is the end of the contract. Resigning, if this is true, how do you think the Flash will be like without Iris? I mean, the show itself, I think, is, it should be winding down. We're over halfway through its run, almost certainly. So if they're going to only go for one more season, two more seasons, they can probably convince her to stick around enough to finish it out. If they, like, I think if it just feels pretty jump the sharky if Iris leaves the show for the last season. You can come up with a plot where she does less, she's around, gotcha. But if she's just gone, that sounds bad. And I'm not a big Iris fan. Just once again, because I don't like when everybody's part of the team and everyone has powers, and so I don't think they've written her the best or given her. They haven't figured out what to do with her that makes her distinct and interesting, and therefore it's like she's just one more person on the team, and I don't like that. But I would hate it if they just like wrote her off or killed her off or anything like that where she's gone. I think that would be bad. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to run long enough that they can't find some way to keep her enough. And you can come up with a plot where, like, she's on vacation for 3 months, like, traveling the world. There's something you can do to have something to where she's not gone, but she's a much limited presence on the show. But that's what happens with a lot of these CW shows that shoot in Vancouver. They do 22 episode seasons, and they hire people when the show starts that are 25, 24, and then the shows run forever. And therefore, you got these people that they were single and full of energy when the show started, and by season 5, they're married, they have a kid, and they're commuting. And it takes a toll. I mean, you obviously, Game Man, you've listened to Rosenbaum's podcast, and you've heard these. Every single one, Tom Welling, Rosenbaum, all of them are like, man, it is rough to do these CW shows. It takes a toll. Stephen Amell's talked about it. I mean, he had a meltdown. Stephen Amell had a full blown meltdown on the Michael Rosenbaum podcast because those shows are just so draining. Tom, what role do you think Wanda is going to play following movies in this series? I think she's going to be a little bit more antagonistic. I think she's going to be troublemaker all throughout Phase 4. I don't know that she'll be a full blown villain, but I think it'll be very much a WandaVision type situation where she is a mess and does not know her own strength, and she's going to constantly be causing enormous amounts of trouble. Zachary, would you rather see the upcoming MCU shows or Star Wars shows? If you had to pick MCU, and then you'll never get to start the Star Wars shows, vice versa. Okay. Pause and think. What do we got coming? Okay. I would probably go with the Star Wars shows. Simply because we have a lot more MCU content already. Twice as many movies. And a lot of the Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we've seen these characters before. A Rhodey show, we've seen the character before in the way that we'll see them. I mean, obviously, they get the front and center. I get that, but it's not the same thing as giving Ahsoka a TV show. Seeing Obi-Wan giving a TV show between a lot of that stuff is just a little bit more, pops a little bit more for me. So I would probably go with the Star Wars ones, I think. Rich Reviews thoughts on that the San Diego Comic Con getting canceled again, although a slim down event will sometime in the fall. It makes sense. I get it. The world is, there's hope. There's things coming together that like okay, maybe, but we're still a long way from. I mean, the last numbers I saw, San Diego Comic Con, when they do it, it's like 130,000 people in one building. I went to an event that had 30,000 people at it, and it was an enormous, just everywhere you went, just crowds and crowds of people. And this is it, like it was in downtown Atlanta, and like we literally, when we left, we were just crowding the streets. It was kind of bad. It's like we're like surrounded cars. This is dangerous. 30,000 people. You think 3 times that in one building. Like it's gonna be a while before society is ready to do that. So it is what it is. Like I applied at the beginning of last year to speak at some Comic Cons, doing some stuff about YouTube. I want to get into that sort of space. And so then some of the Comic Cons here in Texas have been, one of the Houston ones messaged me about submitting to do a panel for their event in May. And I was looking into it, I was like, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. I'm not super worried personally, but then I looked at it and they couldn't guarantee a single guest. There was not one guest listed. And it seemed just, I was looking at it thinking, this is just going to get canceled because they don't have anything. How do you sell tickets to an event? How do you get excitement? How do you do anything when no one is booked? And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to even apply. And if I'm not going to, I don't know who else is. So it makes sense that they're afraid and pushing the bats back. Gamerman, what are your thoughts on Captain Luther so far? Do you ever want John Cry's version, or does that not fit the show's tone? So I did a review on my second channel, Sean Chandler Plus. I talked about episode 2, so I touched on it there, I believe. I talked about each of the different plot lines and touched and gave some thoughts on it. So, I mean, it sounds like I mean, that video has my thoughts, so I don't want to elaborate too much on it. Just on Sean Chandler Plus, the YouTube channel, I have a video where I talk about it, and I go into this one, so I don't want to cover it a second time here, but do I want John Cry's version to show up? If the way that the show is that it's actually in, I mean, it should be in the Arrowverse, it would make sense for him to show up. So sure. I mean, his version gets a little bit, they kind of go back and forth between him being kind of serious villain guy and him being campy over the top villain guy. But you can always just dial that back for the show, so I'd be game for it. Dave Patterson, if you had $1 every time someone messaged you that they watched Warrior and really liked it, what amount of money would be good for you? Really liked it. Would that amount of money be good for you? Yeah. Yes. It would be more than the money about the WandaVision question, but that's because I put out a couple videos at the beginning of last year where I was just praising the movie Warrior as one of my favorite movies and one of the best of the decade. And those two videos combined have like 250,000 views. That's a lot of people hearing about a movie that was underwatched. And so there was about 3-4 months straight where every day someone would message me, I watched Warrior and I loved it. I watched Warrior and I loved it. Every single day. So it would have been just several $100s just from last year from that one stretch. And then it's trickled. It's not quite as frequent as it used to be, but it's still pretty consistent that people message me. I watched Warrior for the first time and I loved it. So like it would be hundreds of dollars. Disney Nerd, do you think Wanda will become a villain now that she's learning new dark magic from the Book of the Damned? Yes. In some sorts. I don't know if she'll be an overt villain or, much like she was on this show, just someone that doesn't know their own power and knows what they want and they don't realize the damage it will do. Adam Gunther, do you think Evan Peters will ever appear in the MCU again? Maybe as the real Quicksilver, potentially? I mean, the character didn't die or anything like that, so it's possible. I mean, it's possible. I don't know. I wouldn't know where to guess on that one because I don't know where some of these things are going. I may perhaps guess at the moment, at this moment, under 50% would be my guess. Zachary, will you make a poll for the February selected video even though it is March now? Yeah, I need to. I need to make up for that. I've said it many times across my channels how just a February is a rough month for me, and with the way my brain works, I'll be in a moment where I can't really get anything done. So I think I can't get any real work done. So I think, what can I get done? And my brain goes through what are the things that I do this time of the month. What do I normally do? And so then that's even where I put up those polls for the February. I'll have these thoughts of like, it would be great if I could get this done. Let me put the pieces of motion to get that done. But I'm not thinking big picture of like, wait, I'm stuck without power. I probably should factor that into what's realistic for what I'm going to get done next week. And I didn't do that. And so then I put out that request, got all the requests for everything, and then I never put the poll up because I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get a video done, get this video done. The week that was after that, because I was just playing catch up and cleaning up my house. And then this past week, there's just no room. I mean, it's the first week of the year, but the last 2 weeks, there wasn't room. I didn't have time. Movies actually came out this week, and that's exactly what happened. So I just need to put the poll up and maybe do a two for this month or something like that. Do a couple of these different ones that people have been requesting. Gamerman, do you think HBO Max is looking to buy the CW? Just a theory I've seen. I don't know why. I mean, I wouldn't just think that. I would have to have more information with the theories. What's the evidence for it? Because at face value, I don't know why they'd want to buy an entire network. I don't know what benefits them in that regard. Like I know why they would want more DC content because they're a DC streaming platform. But I don't know what they would want with Walker Texas Ranger. I just don't know how that fits into their brand. Ryan West, when do you think they'll introduce Miles Morales in the MCU? Do you think they should? Well, I mean, it's tricky because Spider-Man is Sony, and then Marvel Studios is MCU, and they cut a deal to work together. It became very clear a year and a half ago they're not getting along great. So Marvel Studios doesn't want to do more things to intertwine with Sony if they don't have to. It's currently beneficial for both of them, but so the idea of him showing up the MCU, I have no idea when, if that would happen. The idea that does Sony want to have as much Spider-Man content as they can? Yeah, because they make tons of money on that. That's why we're getting a Morbius movie. So chances they'll do some I don't know. And from their perspective, he already has his own franchise. So does he need to have a live action one too? Is it confusing to have Peter Parker and Miles Morales in a universe? Some of it's even like, why would you make Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse and then a Miles Morales video game? Part of it, before he's in live action, part of it is because that starts to educate more and more people about who he is. Like, I had never read a Miles Morales comic book before I saw Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, but by now I know a great deal about him because I've seen the movie and played the game and other things here and there, because that's what introduced me to him. And it's a great movie and a great game. So now a much broader audience knows who the character is. So suddenly you can invest several $100 million to make a movie about him that's live action and believe that it'll make money back. Disney Nerd, the final question for me. Have you enjoyed shooting videos from this position? I enjoyed the novelty of it. It's much more difficult to shoot from here because, as you can see in the camera, I've got my lights hanging from the ceiling over there. It's just all set up for filming. And right now I'm like in a cramped corner. My computer is sitting on a stack of books. My blue light over here is tucked. There's like a little gap between the wall where my desk is at. And I literally have like the light. It's not on right now, but the light that lights my face when I'm using my other camera, it's hanging from a microphone, and so there's a lot of complications shooting right here, but I enjoy novelty, so that's been fun. David Patterson, I'm going to watch Watchmen movie after this. Do you think I will like it? I heard it is similar to The Boys, which I really like. Um, it's similar to The Boys in that it's a deconstruction of superheroes. It's a commentary on, wait, if people really were this powerful, there would be implications for that are not all good. And so it plays into that, the idea that you have these heroes that are saving lives, but they're actually really bad people. It has stuff like that, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. But it touches on a lot of that stuff. The tone of it is very different. It doesn't have kind of the sense of humor the way that The Boys does. But it has the dark superhero culture type elements to it. Um, the comic book, the graphic novel it's based off of, is maybe the most celebrated graphic novel of all time. And so it's great layered material. So the but it's also was one that they spent 20 years trying to convert it into a movie because it was so designed to be a graphic novel that the guy that wrote it, he disowned the movie because his perspective was, you can't make a movie out of this. I designed this for the format of turning pages. You designed the story to fit with the panels, and you just can't do that with a movie. So he kind of disowned it. So there's a group of people who don't like it for that reason. And then it's very Zack Snydery at the same time. So make of that as you will. Do I think you'll like it? I would think so. I would think that it would have a lot of things that you would enjoy, because it tackles a bunch of like very layered stuff. But I don't even know which version to recommend you watch. There's three different versions, with different levels of adaptation. Like there's a version of it that's like the full translation of the graphic novel, and it is long. It's like 4 hours long, and there's like animated sections and stuff because that's all stuff that's from the graphic novel, and so yeah, it's an interesting one. Laura Massa, what minor changes plot wise would you have made for WandaVision in order to improve it? For me, something was missing and I can't figure out what. Um, I mean, I wouldn't have teased directions they weren't actually headed. And as fun as it was to have some stunt casting for a recast of a brother, as fun as that was, I think they hurt themselves doing that. I think they needed to add in the more of a discussion of the actual implications of what Wanda was doing. That tries to like make her sympathetic, like you feel really bad for what she went through, and we're supposed to really think that Hayward is the devil and he's evil when that's just the perspective of the show. If they gave an episode to Hayward, and I'm not even recommending they've done this, but and you have him as this normal guy that's just works for the government, kind of well liked by people, and then half the people he knows die, and all of a sudden he has to be over this organization in this post-apocalyptic world, and he's just trying to find a way to keep it all together. And you play out the entire story from his perspective of he's just trying to figure out how do you keep humans safe. How do you have weapons to be able to keep us safe from all these superpowered people? There's this way to have a perspective that he's just as sympathetic as she is. He's the hero of his own story. That he's the guy that was trying to protect people and create weapons to protect people during the actual apocalypse. And then within 3 weeks of everyone coming back, now another superhero takes a city hostage. That you could just kind of play some of that out, and you go, you you think all these movies that we like, that if you told their story from the perspective of someone else, they're the bad guy. And that's what this is. This show's entirely about perspective as to who's the villain. There's a very strong argument that our lead character is very much the villain, and the guy that's portrayed as the villain is a jerk, but not nearly as villainous as the show wants to portray him as. Zachary, what do you think Disney should do with releasing Black Widow? I have no idea. I mean, that's the problem. Nobody really has any idea what should do. Raya and the Last Dragon came out, and it looks like it's going to have an opening weekend of under 10 million. That seems like that is a fraction of what it would normally get. And they can't do that with Black Widow. Black Widow, more demand, better franchise, but like bigger name, more excitement, but they can't half what they want to make on that movie. They want it to make $1 billion, and I have no idea what the best answer is. I just have no clue. Ryan West, what overall arc would you want to see after multiverse arc that they're doing with WandaVision through Doctor Strange? I mean, it's impossible to say because I don't know what they're doing with the multiverse arc. Like, hey, what do you want them to do after the thing that they're about to do, but you haven't seen it. You haven't even seen a trailer for it. I have no idea, because I don't know what the implications are. I don't even know who the villain's going to be. I don't know what it's going to look like. So I can't say what I want after that without knowing what this does, where it leaves the characters. When will the podcast return? I think I'm going to do it next week. I think my plan is to do one next week because movies have come out, WandaVision's come out, and I'm past the month of February, which is just really awful for me. So I have wiggle room again to do something like that. So I think it'll be next week. Yeah, so probably next Wednesday. I think. Could be wrong. We'll find out. See what happens. Thank you guys so much for watching, tuning in, supporting the channel over here on Patreon, and I'll see you next week.